You, Dalya and Faisal, good morning. As they kindly mentioned, I work for Al-Arabiya news channel, and Nicola, basically your presentation was so insightful because it is part of the debate that we have as a television network every day, how to make it more interactive. We call it the third screen, how to involve our viewers on the social media platforms in addition to watching us on television. When Nicola just mentioned FOBO, fear of being offline, it's basically, I think, the word of the day today, and it's not only a few in this room who agree with her. It's basically social media and connectivity has become an integral part of our lives. So listening to this presentation, it's very relevant before our next panel, because the title of our next panel is Wired Women. But before I introduce the topic further, I would like to ask our speakers to join me on stage. I will introduce them. We have with us an impressive panel today. Her Highness Princess Ameerah Al-Taweel is the founder and CEO of Time Entertainment. Please join me on stage. Mrs. Huang is CEO of China Interactive Media Group, and she joins us all the way from China. Mrs. Nasief is from IBM, the head of the healthcare and life science executive. So thank you very much for being here with us today. And Mrs. Dalya Muthanna, President and CEO of GE Gulf, also has joined us today. And Mrs. Zainab Salbi, founder of Women for Women International. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. So, as I said, it is my pleasure and honor to be with an all-women panel. I have to say that this is a first. I've been moderating panels for 10 years, and I haven't had a women-only panel, so I'm very proud to be a part of this panel this morning. So, why is our discussion today about wired women? Why is it not wired generation or wired age? It is simply because this is not only about connectivity. This is about also the stubborn gender gap worldwide, which is the reason we are talking about connectivity and women today, and not connectivity in general, on this panel at least. Let us look first at the current situation for women around the world. The yearly Global Gender Gap Report that is issued by the World Economic Forum benchmarks national gender gaps of 142 countries on 4 levels: economic, political, education, and health. In its latest publication, the 2014 report showed, again, persisting gender gap divides across and within regions. Based on the 9 years of data available for the report, the world has seen only a small improvement in equality for women in the workplace. The gender gap is narrowest in terms of health and survival. 35 countries have already closed the gap entirely. The educational attainment gap is the next narrowest. 25 countries have closed the gap entirely. And I think in the Arab world, we are closing this gap in terms of education. While the gender gap for economic participation and opportunity lags stubbornly behind, and the gap for political empowerment, the 4th pillar measured, remains wider still. Overcoming the difficulties faced by women is not easy. However, mobile technology is fast becoming a powerful tool in empowering women. The internet is opening doors for women, especially in developing nations, by allowing them to become entrepreneurs, by enabling them to seek advice and access online mentoring schemes. It is opening up job opportunities and life improvement options previously unavailable to them. Social media is providing a platform for their voices to be heard. So there's no doubt that technology and social media are transforming the lives of women around the globe and in our part of the region. So there are so many aspects of this topic to discuss. In order to do that, I'm sure that our panelists are best placed because they are all achievers, each in her own field. Let us start the discussion, first of all, I think, by discussing how has connectivity changed our lives, because I cannot imagine a time, although I remember it, when someone used to call us at home on the old telephone and not find us at home, let's say. I can't believe that we have we have undergone so much change in the sense of how connected we are to the world.
Someone can tell when you're ignoring them.
Exactly. So I'd like to start with you, Your Highness, on how has connectivity changed your life and the people around you, because it's very relevant that you are from Saudi Arabia, and I'm sure you can give us a glimpse of what it has done to women around you in Saudi.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank 2454 for this opportunity for all of us to connect and network. And thank you for moderating the panel and all of my fellow impressive women. I was asking myself that question yesterday, how connectivity affected me. And by a blessing or a coincidence, I came across a page on one of my favorite books. And it's about a story of Harun al-Rashid and how he wanted to see why Majnoon Layla was so crazy about her, that he felt she was so beautiful and fascinating, and he wanted to meet her himself. And when he finally did, he was very astonished that she was average in his opinion. And he was very honest, and he told her, I don't understand how come, he was so crazy about you, and he was called the Majnoon. In my opinion, you're average. And she said to him, in order for you to see the beauty of me, you need to see it through the eyes of the Majnoon. And this reminded me of a conversation I always have with media leaders who say, why are you investing in YouTubers? What do you see in them? It's a wave. They could crash at any minute. They could become popular one day, and then they're gone the next day. And I tell them, you can't see why until you see through my eyes. Because I don't look at them just as talented. I look at them as the foundation of our society. More than half of the Middle Eastern population is under the age of 25. 83% of them is connected on internet daily. The average young Arab person spends 5 hours of his day being connected. This is not just an investment. This is a need we have in our society. We can't have our content anymore decided by a couple of people what to segment, what for, what formats to buy. It has to be from Arab youth towards Arab youth. And that's why we're in the summit today to discuss this very important point. And that's why I started all of the companies I've started, whether it's a talent agency, a production house, or an events company. It's really to give opportunity to young people that they can express themselves and create content for their own selves. And connectivity is a part of my everyday life at work and even at home.
And you're investing in basically content that is generated by the youth for the youth. So
Yes.
basically, this is exactly how you are using, in a way, connectivity
Yes.
in order to produce also output that is also online, partly, in addition to being on the traditional media. Isn't
Yes.
that the case?
Online helped us to discover the trends. What young people want, we actually do some marketing studies based on it. We decide our calendar on events. We decide what shows based on what people need and want. We didn't have that before except by very expensive studies that are done by strategic companies. But now you can really sense the trend and feel the pulse of young people. And this is how we decide to go next. When we find a YouTuber who's becoming a hit and people really watch him all the time, we really connect to him, we try to manage and see how we can create content not only for online but also for TV, because also TV audiences love to see something new. And I think that in addition to buying global formats, TV and traditional and online media is starting to create their own content that is based on what young people are creating and what they actually would love to see. And this is what, our company is doing with a lot of other companies like NBC Network, OSN, and other companies as well, where we're producing content that is mainly done with people who are young, unexperienced, but they got the chance to be creative.
Mrs. Huang, you come from China, and your story is very interesting because basically connectivity changed your life.
Yes, it has. I started really as a writer and publisher. I publish a fashion magazine, lifestyle magazine in China, a small local magazine. And I write about my feelings about Chinese women in Chinese society in my magazine and also in other magazines. This was all very quiet until blogosphere happened in China and social media happened in China. I remember because China has a very strict censorship issues, so we don't really have Facebook and Twitter. We have a parallel universe, if you will, of social media. So the the Twitter equivalent in China is called Weibo. And I remember when I was recruited to put my articles on Weibo, it was a phenomenal experience that I never experienced, that was just amazing in my life. Within about 4 hours, I had 100 million page views.
And it was totally unexpected for you.
It was, I was working in my office, and all of a sudden the phones start ringing, and my staff were saying that there were journalists who wanted to talk to me. And I had no idea what was going on. And they were asking about the various articles I have written, perhaps a year ago, 2 years ago at the time, that was published in print already, but it just went online. And somehow those articles about feelings about living in China as a woman and where women are and how sometimes we're frustrated struck a note with Chinese women, especially professional urban women, that it generated a huge amount of interest in terms of viewership. And really, I think internet helped me to discover my voice.
And why is it, do you think, that it got that much attention? What was it that resonated?
I think it has something to do with my experience, because I more or less was educated in the United States since I was very young. So I did not have a traditional Chinese education, which still embodies a lot of Confucius culture in that education, about the code of conduct of women, about what women can say and can express versus what is not appropriate. So having sort of been brought up, educated in the United States, I sort of have the benefit or disadvantage of not having had a very strict Chinese upbringing of what is appropriate and what is not. It is part of my ignorance of the inappropriateness of how women should behave and express themselves that has actually accidentally allowed me to echo a lot of Chinese women who have really outgrown the very conservative Confucius mode of thinking. And just for those of you who are not familiar with Confucius' teaching, he only said 2 things about women. The one thing that he said, which sticks in my mind, is a virtuous woman is a stupid woman. So, okay, never mind, I'm not his fan. And the second thing he said about women is that you have to be, in your life, you have to beware of small-minded people and women in general. So these are the only 2 things that Confucius ever said about women. And nobody has ever really picked that up and said, wait a minute, we're now in the 21st century. Someone has to address this traditional belief about what women is supposed to be in Chinese society. There are just all kinds of ways that the media were putting professional women down. For example, any woman who's over 35 and unmarried in China for a long time, this is actually what inspired me to write, is called in Chinese society, it's a very common term, it's called a leftover woman. And it is very offensive term, but it was so widely used in the media that even women journalists who are well over 35 and not married were also using the word to describe people who are like them. So I think it was writing about this and about raising kind of a self-awareness that there are certain stigmas that we need to overcome to be more comfortable members of our society. But internet really allowed me to be able to connect with a lot of people in China.
Mrs. Dalya, we don't have Confucius, but we have Daesh and ISIS in the Arab world. And I think that women are also at a disadvantage in that area. So in the Gulf, we definitely, in the Arab world in general, we also have the stereotyping. How do you think is connectivity helping women in this part of the world find their voice? And how do you think it's changing their lives, especially from a Khaliji perspective?
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to start first maybe to give a bit of perspective of what connectivity means to GE as a technology infrastructure company. And then I'll move on to the women's topic. So within GE, I mean, we've heard some remarkable statistics in the past 1 day and a half. And the way that has impacted a company like GE, so there are 3 things that has transformed the way we do business. The first one is what we call the industrial internet. There are several other terms that are used that are very similar to the word of industrial internet, like the Internet of Things. And basically what that means is with the price of the sensors becoming less and less expensive, and the cost of the storage of vast amounts of data, you're able to do a lot more with the infrastructure equipment that we sell into the world. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is what we call micro manufacturing, or another term is 3D printing or advanced manufacturing. And the third is the global brain. And basically what the global brain means is the ability for you to access talent across the globe. So things like crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, crowd wisdom. So the ability to tap into that vast amount of resources that you have around the globe. Now, when we look at MENAT is one of the fastest growing regions in terms of the population. And women are a big part of that growth in population. So with the increased connectivity with these resources, the more that would shift the relationship between employers and employees, between suppliers and manufacturers, and between manufacturers and their customers as well. So connectivity has created a platform for us to connect into that wide scope of talent. It could disrupt supply chains, disrupt distribution networks. It reduces barriers of entry. You mentioned in your opening speech around women being able to become entrepreneurs easier. With inventions like 3D printing, you're able to prototype and test new ideas. You can enter them into the market with less capital. As I said, you disrupt supply chains. You're able to create or establish new local supply chains. And by that, you reduce inventory, you reduce transportation costs. And all of this has become an opportunity for women, specifically in the MENAT region and in the Gulf. Now, you mentioned also earlier that women education does vary from one country to another. It even varies in between countries in the Gulf. Now, the UAE has really been able to be the leader in terms of really promoting women and empowering women in leadership positions. And I'd like to actually take a moment here and thank Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, UAE Vice President and Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, for the launch of the innovation strategy for the UAE a few weeks ago. And I think just yesterday they've launched the innovation strategy for Dubai specifically. So strategies like that would help the governments to, especially governments in the Gulf that are predominantly oil-based. Through our discussions with the governments, one of the key things top of their agenda is how to diversify their economies and how to shift from an oil-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. So leveraging the power of the connectivity that we have today, leveraging the ability to make infrastructure equipment talk to each other, so big data and big iron, and you marry those so that they start to talk together, react to each other. And then coupled with an innovation strategy and the government putting the right infrastructure and the tools to support women or men, but the next generation to be a part in the diversification of the economy and making it more of a knowledge-based economy as opposed to an oil-based economy.
It just happens that all of you come from a business background. So basically, I think all of us can give a lot of insight on how connectivity helps women in business, definitely. And I will be getting back to that because I think that a lot of change is happening in that area and encouraging women to open up their businesses, to become entrepreneurs through that connectivity and what the internet is offering them in that space. But before I do that, I would like to also discuss the kind of societal impact also and the emotional impact of that connectivity has had on women in this part of the world. Summer, you come from both worlds. You are American Saudi. Yes. So, and you are also an executive at a multinational company. What kind of transformative power do you think connectivity gives women, especially in our part of the world?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think this is a wonderful panel. So fantastic to be sitting next to such powerful women who are part of the change and the transformation. And to give my experience, I mean, I started back in 1998 in equity research, looking at .coms, and that was the era of the Google being born, and prior to that, a couple of years earlier, Amazon. And to see the transformation that's been happening from the .com era into today, and to give a perspective on that and how it's changed our lives, it's a very short time span, and it's such an incredible leap. I mean, for me, in my work environment and in my social environment and in the connective world that we live in today, I would say that a massive impact has happened on two different levels. One is the ability to be mobile. So, the days of sitting behind a desk have gone away to the days of now having women traveling all over the world in paperless environments, working with teams around the globe, as well as having access to people globally and access to data. People today are going on Google and learning how to on anything from, potting plants to how do I create a web page for myself online and create my online presence.
I think Google has become every woman's best friend and the keeper of her secrets also.
Absolutely. To transformations that I see on the ground level. I mean, I work between Dubai and Saudi Arabia, and just in the population, the female population, and what's happening there in terms of jobs and the openness of the society to start bringing women into the workforce in different levels, to popping up and leveraging social media sites such as Instagram to start medium to small businesses, where women are, using fundamentally very simple things that are such as baking or fashion, and actually finding their way online to create a presence for themselves and a way to be a participant in the overall growth of the economy.
Zainab, you have dedicated most of your career to women. You have published books about women, especially the plight of women in war zones. And I know that you have now initiatives that will make use of connectivity, let's say, to also tackle women's issues. So when you hear this discussion, how much do you think has connectivity played a role in the change that is happening for women, especially in the Arab world and in Iraq, which is very close to your heart?
Well, thank you. Before I go there, actually, so about 21 years ago, this was in the mid-90s, early 90s, I started an organization called Women for Women International, which was all about connectivity. It was about asking every woman around the world to sponsor one woman survivor of war by sending her $30 a month and exchanging pictures and letters with her. At that time, if you remember, this is only 21 years ago, or something like that. At that time, we did not have websites used as much as we do. We do not have mobile phones as much as we do. I mean, the world has changed in less than in just 20 years. And so I remember someone saying, let me build a website for you. And I said, no, it's too much work. I can barely handle my snail mail. I cannot deal with emails. Well, that very personal connection of just simply appealing for women to send $30 a month and exchange pictures and letters led to $100 million raised from women in 78 countries to helping women, to helping 500,000 women around the world in war zones. Now, and that was done before we are now using scan your picture and scan your and email your letter and wire your money to the woman, whether she is in Afghanistan or Iraq or Rwanda or Congo. And so connectivity has actually come a huge way in helping women. Now, as I was leaving the organization, I was always curious, and I wrote a whole book about that. What is the secret sauce to create change in women's lives? Because women are a marginalized group of people in the whole world. There's no secret about that. And as a world, as humanity, we simply can no longer grow, we can no longer be economically stable, we can no longer be politically stable, we cannot be societally stable if we do not improve the status of women in the world, generally, each country and worldwide. So I was constantly asking, what is the secret sauce that creates change in women's lives? And I came up actually with a very simple one, which is inspiration. To create change in women's lives is you need to inspire women to tell her that there's the possibilities of change. And look at Summer in here and how she changed her life. Now, if you look at the very essence of that, this is what creates change. We can reform laws, we can do a lot of things, but at the end of it is her needs to lead that change. Now, how do you then communicate the stories of inspiration? Well, in the old days, we used to communicate it through gossip. You know, we go and visit each other's neighbors and all of that and understand, she has a better life now because she did this and this. Well, also you can communicate that through books. But then social media becomes very important, and actually traditional media becomes very, very important because you communicate inspiration through soap operas, through TV talk shows, through internet, through small footage, through all kinds of things. So that becomes a very essential issue, actually, in a world where we must have improved women's rights, not for women's sake. Not for women's sake. We should do it for women's sake, but it's also for economic, political, and social sake. We have Goldman Sachs, the financial institution, saying we cannot have economic growth if we do not encourage women to be in small and medium businesses. We have world leaders having issues and data and facts that when women are included in peace negotiations, you have actually more lasting peace because they are bringing different elements for stabilization of countries. We have evidence that women are more in the board of directors of corporations. There is better growth, financial growth.
It's better for the bottom line. It's better for business,
Absolutely.
Better for decision
So
making.
we need to invest in women regardless, and hopefully next year this panel will be half men who actually would be joining us in advocating for women to be part of the solutions for stability in the world. And so if we look at the essence of all of that, how do we go about it? It's inspiration, and how do you communicate inspiration is through connectivity.
Zainab, you took me to a very interesting topic because, as I said, when I was researching connectivity and women, basically, as I said, there is an integral part, which is the emotional level. I know of friends of mine who rely on networks for their psychological well-being, just being connected to other women who have similar issues online, women who get inspiration. You mentioned inspiration, it's very important. So many women get inspired by Pinterest, by Facebook, by what they see on social media. Your Highness, I want to go back to you with also the societal aspect, because we live in a part of the world where there are certain inhibitions. You cannot say everything that you believe in because of certain considerations. How much do you think has connectivity given women a voice? Sometimes probably they go online without saying their name, anonymously. Sometimes they do, and we have seen stars created on social media on a social level because of the messages that they say. So how much do you think has it become a tool for societal change?
I think it became the platform. Social media gives women, for the first time, an equal opportunity and an equal chance of men to express and to connect. And I feel that this is extremely vital. And I'll give you a small story of a friend of mine. Her name is Shahad Al-Shail. She started a project called Just. And what she saw is that a lot of the people in the fashion industry have excuses when abuse in factories in Far Asia or other countries in the supply chain of fashion happens, that they didn't know about it. So she created this website where you can actually track the supply chain in the fashion industry and understand exactly who's manufacturing your own things and under what circumstances do they put their own people through.
So ethical shopping, to buy ethically.
Exactly. So she started this website and she used social media to really engage the people in it. And now she's going to be, and I hope that she wins in the competitions, she's nominated for an award for Obama under the US State Department for Innovation and Technology. She is a story of a woman that without social media and without the internet, her idea wouldn't have gone this far. And I feel that hopefully with the support of people, this idea and this project and this website could change the lives of millions of people around the world, gives them dignity and save their own lives. This is what I feel social media can do. This is what I feel connectivity can do. And, you know, like my colleague said, with more women, it improves organizational efficiency. It improves the world. Unfortunately, there is a very unfortunate statistic that less than 1% in the GCC on boards and executive committees are women. Less than 1%. Can you imagine? I mean, in the world, it's also low numbers. You're talking about 17% in Europe. But still, let's have a target for next year where hopefully we can discuss this, that women at least reach 2%. Let's push for it every year. Women in leadership positions is not only something that should be governed by certain governments, like, for example, the UAE launching a law that there has to be one woman in state-owned companies, or the Saudi Arabia, thank you, or Saudi Arabia has to have 20% of parliament participation are women. Not only governments should drive this change, social media should drive this change, mindsets should drive this change, because they are half of the society. Without them evolving and participating and being in the table rather than discussing on behalf of them, we will never go as a developing country or a developing nation the way we want to be.
Basically, this is also a huge debate, because there's a debate on whether it should be quota-based or whether it should follow the normal evolution, and just changing mindsets would bring more women into the workspace. Samar, let me get your opinion here, because we are moving into the women in business, and definitely this is maybe it's highlighted more in the Arab world, but it is a problem worldwide, that women are not participating in the workforce as much as they should, especially in the boards of companies. You see them reach middle management, but then you don't see them break through to the upper levels of management in companies. So I know that, for example, Skype has made it much easier for women to travel and stay connected with their families. So how much do you think this connectivity can help women in that area?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that women in today's age are facing a major issue of trying to have it all. And trying to have it all means being a great mom, means being a professional and actually getting your work done and being present and being a leader. And, you know, still having time for the other day-to-day activities. And
the work-life balance, basically.
Work-life balance. I mean, that's become a very big issue and a very big topic amongst women. As much as we want to contribute to the growth of the economy and be a participating role within the workforce, at the same time, we are also conditioned to be a part of society and being mothers. And being mothers is also a full-time job. So you're looking at two major full-time jobs. One is how do I advance my career? And if you look at what's happening in the West, for instance, in the West, women are getting married at a later age and using technology and different scientific innovations to make sure that they're able to have families. So it's a very unique juggle between concepts. I think here in the Middle East, you know, women are also very culturally tied to family comes first. And it's something that we were raised on, and that is a part of who we are. So when we consider coming into the workforce, and I've heard this a lot through my career, and a lot of times when promotions come up and when things get evaluated, you know, unfortunately, women are looked at as, do we want to invest in them for the long run? Because will they stay or will they have children and then go? And, you know, a male is more of a secure investment. So I think that with technology, because we are connected, yes, you are working more, you're working 24/7 these days, but it gives the woman an equal opportune chance to actually have now both worlds, because it is accessible. It is at our fingertips. It's still a very unique juggle and a very unique balance that we're trying to achieve in our lives, but I definitely think that being connected contributes to that.
Zainab, go
May I
ahead.
say something? Because in the Middle East, we have the challenge of 60% of university graduates on average are women. And then that rate, so we have educated women who are not working. And that actually creates tension on the economy. And so when they graduate from college, they drop into maybe 10% employment of women. And it's a job market that we actually need to create. It's a market that we need to create more jobs. That's part of the crisis that we are facing in the Middle East. We need more jobs for our youth, basically. And so it becomes a political issue that we actually need to encourage women to become more entrepreneurs. That is why countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, is encouraging that. It is a vitally important issue. We need more women to go into the job market and to create jobs for others.
And it is lost return on investment. You are investing so much in education, and that yet you are not reaping the benefit in the economy.
Absolutely. So where's connectivity comes in here? At this moment in our region, particularly, we need to inspire each other. The inspiration no longer can come from the West vis-a-vis Arab and Muslim women, because at the end of the day, you're a Western woman and you're in America and wearing shorts, and I can't do that as an Arab woman. And so we need to start inspiring each other. If we use this country, for example, yesterday a major law was passed granting equal citizenship for women for Emirati women who are married to foreigners. Their children now get citizenship. This is a major, major law, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
That is more progressive than countries like Lebanon or Morocco or other countries.
Yeah,
So
in Lebanon,
now,
unfortunately,
this
a woman
is-
cannot give the citizenship
Now, this
to a
is
child.
very important reflection of equality of citizenship for women. Now, this is the time where we need to actually spread the news. This is no longer an Emirati news. This is a major, and no longer a Gulf news, actually. This is a major Arab and Muslim news. And this needs to inspire each other. Leaders are now need to be inspiring each other and women. And if I was an Egyptian woman, I want to say, see, Emirates gave that to women, now I want it to. Do you see what I mean? So we're in a critical moment of needing to inspire each other by sharing our news, but also by sharing our challenges. And this region, you mentioned ISIS. What is ISIS doing? Actually, ISIS is using women as a symbolism for their politics. That's why we now have slave markets of women in Iraq. The way to combat them is partially military, but partially societal, that we need to make a point of what women can do when she is free, when she is showing us for her full potential economically, socially, and politically. And that is how we combat, another way of combating ISIS.
Huang, you basically made a career out of breaking out of the mold and saying what others were afraid to say. But I'm sure that you inspired a whole generation of women, and this is why you are where you are today, by the use of this technology. Now, the road is not easy. There are always ups and downs, and there are always advantages and disadvantages. So do you think that it is being used in the right way? Do you think that you are on the right track, especially in China, which also has a special case for women?
I think, as I listen to the panel, Chinese society, I think, has certain similarities to the Arab world in the fact that we are entrenched in a drastically different tradition than the West. On the other hand, we have always also been opened up and have in many ways modernized our society, our education system. And really, this popularity on the internet has also taught me something about our own tradition. Most Chinese women, a lot of them are very powerful, like the panel here. But none of them, well, I wouldn't say none of them, but we are very shy about talking about the percentage of women in power. Here, I actually find that you're not shy, because most Chinese women don't want to be out there. They rather to have someone else to be, they are
at the forefront. They don't want to be at the forefront.
They don't want to be in front of the camera. They don't want to be speaking about it. They want to be the behind the scene power player rather than very much at the forefront. And I think it has something to do with the fact that the social pressure, even in China today, is for women to be demure, submissive, but yet powerful. You know, there's some allure to that. I think, I'm not so sure whether you watched the recent images from the APEC meeting, which was held in China, and Xi Jinping, the current president of China, in the group photo, his wife was next to him, and everybody was waving except Xi Jinping, and his wife kind of gave him a look, and he immediately started waving, you know, and this is the kind of sort of subtle power Chinese women like to have, but you will never see Mrs. Xi Jinping
waving herself.
Or just telling him, or even speaking, walking in front of him, or trying to show the fact that she is a woman in her own right, and she's a person in her own right, and so on and so forth. So there is this very entrenched tradition and in China, and I know a lot of very powerful executive women entrepreneurs who really would hide behind a whole army of people who represent her rather than to be out front and identified as powerful. So I think some of that is cultural. Should we change? I mean, I think that's the question.
Dalya, before you have a comment on that, basically.
Yeah,
yes.
I have a few comments, actually.
Okay, please go ahead.
Maybe on the topics that were addressed a little bit earlier. You know, you spoke a bit about, you said that, you know, we've invested in women, 60% of graduates are women, but then we see a drastic drop of women in the workforce. Now, a lot of that may be attributable to not giving the opportunity for women in the workforce, but I also want to highlight that women also should have the choice if they do want to continue in their career path or if they want to be stay-home moms. And I think that we should celebrate both choices. I don't think, you know, maybe in many instances, the women don't choose to grow in their career paths because they would rather be stay-home moms. And I don't think that the expectation should be that all women graduates have to go down that career path, because at the end of the day, it is impossible to have, it's extremely difficult to have both worlds. And
Yes, but we are having it the other way exaggerated. So as long as it's a choice, it's
as
okay.
long as it's a choice.
Yes.
And I think the issue of connectivity is great because it gives the flexibility. So for stay-home moms or mothers who have, like, you know, young kids that they need to attend to, but are able also to run their businesses remotely because of the ability and the connectivity.
Dalya, we cannot hear you properly.
Sorry,
If you
because
can
of the
speak to
connectivity. So that's one thing that I wanted to say. The second thing is the issue of, you know, having women in the workforce. I think if we just look at it in context, in a bigger scope, it's not only the importance of having women in the workforce, but it's the importance of having a diverse workforce. Because today we don't sell to one type of customer. You know, our geographical scopes of as global companies has become very, very global. So the population that you sell to is very diverse. Hence, the people that work also need to reflect the type or the demographics of the customers. So, and as leaders, when we put together our teams, we have to make sure that our teams are diverse. Diverse in terms of the gender, diverse in terms of nationality, diverse in terms of their backgrounds.
Because they help you better cater to your customers when
Exactly,
you understand
diverse
all
in
types
terms
of
of their
customers.
experiences. Hence, going back to your point that it's, you know, it impacts positively on the bottom line. And then I also really liked the, you know, the point of celebrating our success stories or our role models. I think it's key to highlight these successes, such as, you know, was mentioned earlier on some really successful Saudi women. But we need to really highlight those role models using social media to inspire women and to let them know that they could do more, because there's so much information out there, right? But the key things that we need to educate women on what to do with that data. It's the same thing in the business, right? You have tons of data coming in from sensors throughout all of our gas turbines, steam turbines, aircraft engines, but really what do you do with that data? And we use that data to become more smarter and to utilize our equipment in a more efficient way. So you shift from being, from reactive maintenance to preventive maintenance, where you're able to forecast or foresee certain, downtime before it happens and before it disrupts your business. So, and the same thing, if I was to reflect that and say, well, what can women do with this vast amount of data out there? How can she best utilize that? It's not how much you know anymore, but it's really what can you do with that data, and how to utilize that for her best benefit.
I have two topics that I want to get back to you with. One is very relevant, I think, to the Abu Dhabi Media Summit. It is the image that is painted of women in the media and what women can do about that. And it is the potential of, you said that it has to be a choice. So many women are choosing to work from home these days by setting up their own initiatives because the connectivity allows them to become entrepreneurs from their home. But before, I would like to take a few questions from the audience, and then we continue with our discussion. So please, if you have any question to any of our panelists, give me a sign by raising your hand. And I think there are roving microphones that we can pass on to you to address your question. Please give me a sign if you would like to address any question to any of our panelists. Can we pass on a microphone to the first row? Please, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Hassan from UAE University. This question is directed to our brilliant princess.
To our brilliant and beautiful princess as well.
You say it. And as a matter of fact, we know that the Saudis women are enjoying a lot of change, mainly in education. Yeah. And we know very well that there are many issues which are not resolved yet to get at least, the women into the track of social changes. I would like, of course, to know the effect of connectivity in helping the women in this direction. And I want to know also your really observations and comments about these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Saudi Arabia is a very unique case because we have certain elements like mobility, for example, being able to drive, that are affecting women's participation in the workforce. Women's only offices. We have a certain law that, women's offices and men's offices, if they are mixed, there has to be certain entrances and exits that are separate. This affects a lot of the startups whereby they don't want to invest more cost into that. We need to start HR policy, like you said, the double, rule of being a mother and a person participating in the workforce. There need to be some more HR push, like care, care centers for kids. But overall, we have around 21%. Actually, we have 21% unemployment rate in comparison to 3% to men, 15% in comparison to GCC unemployment rate, in contrast to 3% of men. So our unemployment rate for women is higher, that is, than men. But when you ask Saudi women why is so, you have two main answers. They will not tell you it's because of policies. They will not tell you it's because of anything. The number one answer would be the fact that the society expects them to marry and to have certain responsibilities. And the number two would be mobility and the ability to be, we have certain, especially in the private sector, where you work in the private sector, you have to have anywhere, anytime rules, and it doesn't fit so much for women. I feel that connectivity allowed women to start their own businesses. They sell more on Instagram than they sell if they have their own stores, to push for their own power, to push for their own laws. And it allowed us as a society to move from the first, and I hope so, to the norm. We have a lot of, the first, the one, the only. And this is the thing that I don't like about my society. There shouldn't be the first pilot, and that's the only one we talk about. We should speak about the second pilot and the third first pilot. And that's where we should move as a society, not only in Saudi Arabia, but in GCC countries in general. We should move from this notion of women being so uncommon in leading pioneering positions to being common that we speak about the next wave and the next generation. We have an amazing example here, Noor Al-Ka'bi, who, for me, inspired me. I see her sitting with boards, with meetings, with all men, and I see her being equal, talking with them at the same level. She is inspiring a wave, a generation of upcoming Emirati, GCC, and Arab women to be in that industry that we felt so far is being controlled or dominated by men. So women who are pioneering this industry are not only role models, but we should also push for the next wave of the second, the third, and hopefully for many more of the first in our communities.
I have some questions on Twitter because some questions have been addressed from the audience. On Twitter, I will ask you the questions quickly. Please, I hope we can have quick answers so that we can cover all the topics. This is for Dalya because from the UAE, I guess, it says, how can we get more young women from the UAE involved in the media industry? What do you think of that?
I get the same question on how do we get more Emirati women in the private sector, which is also, so I think it's the same answer across the board, but I think in all cases you need to have that discussion or the discussion between the industry and the educational sector. Today there's a lack of talent. I was just in ADIPEC, actually, in the Abu Dhabi Oil and Gas Conference just last week, and we were discussing the same issue, which is the gap of talent or the lack of talent. And, we need to be able to tap into these resources while they're still in university or maybe even still in high school. And I think the education needs to start from there. I think the industry needs to tap into those resources. The industry needs to sort of create some sort of platform where they are in discussions with government entities, educational institutions, universities, and really also...
what kind of skills are needed in the workplace.
Sorry?
To discover what kind of skills are needed in the workplace.
Yeah, and to describe, and really the growth of this market. So if this media industry is growing by X amount of percentage in the next couple of years, how much talent do we need to fill those gaps, and how many of them can be from the local market? So you start to map out or to forecast really the amount of talent that you need, and you start to have that discussion early on so that you're preparing yourself and you build the pipeline for the growth of that industry. So I think it's a matter of just creating the platform, having discussion between the right stakeholders, really bring them all together around one table and mapping out the needs of the industry.
Samar, I think there are two questions that are related, so I'm going to ask them to you. One is, can women really have it all? And the second is related, I think, because it says many talk about life-work balance, as if life starts the second you leave the office. Isn't life a combination of work, family, friends? Isn't life about doing it all together? So what do you think about that?
Well, and I think it's a great question, and it's something that I think we struggle with, and we're still trying to find out what that case is. And I think it's an individual thing. It's not a majority thing of what does having it all mean. It's really an individual thing, and we've discussed it on many different points. One is the fact that you need to have the option. What would you like to do? Would you like to be a working mother? Would you like to be a stay-at-home mother? It all relates back to what happiness is to you. What are the important factors in your life? And I think that we face some bigger challenges here because culturally we are very much tied to our families. In the West, it's more of, it's less of a solid foundation in that respect. For us, it's something that is incredibly important. So I think it's a unique and individual challenge, and it's not really a question that somebody like myself can answer, because what makes me happy and what fulfills me is something very different than the audience sitting in front of me and the panel sitting around me. I also think that when we look at a culture like the Middle East, we don't adopt what the West, we look at the West, we learn, but we don't adopt all their techniques to what makes sense to us because we're different. And I think that when we look at places like Saudi Arabia, with the age of the internet and the age of the technology that we're in, there's a transformation happening, whereas if you are a working mother, let's say that, you went home, had some children, and you're actually staying at home, there are new ways from the use of technology where you could have batch work and you could still have a purpose and still work. So then the fundamental question of working, what is the definition of it? Does it mean that you're working a 9-to-5 job? Or does it mean that you are being an advocate of the overall growth of the economy? I think at the end of the day, what we're all advocating here is the choice to be a part of that growth of the economy in whatever sense that makes to us as individuals, as women.
Sometimes it's basically the reverse. Sometimes when you get emails in the middle of the night, you ask yourself whether it's the time to work or it's the time for you to be disconnected from work.
Because you have a lot of urgent news to reply to.
Exactly.
Like
Breaking news in the middle of the night. Do we have any other questions? Okay, let me continue with I know you have a comment, but also I want to pick up on a discussion that we were having prior to this panel, because we had a similar discussion in the speakers room earlier, and we were discussing a very interesting point, Zainab, and this is how how women are portrayed in media. And I guess this is why you have been motivated to work on producing to change that image, and I think Her Highness Princess Ameerah is also motivated in that sense. So what is it that you want to change in that area?
Well, there are a few things I want to mention. One is, while social media is very, very, very important, it cannot be the only tool, because we have still a big chunk of our population, and I'm generalizing as the Arab population, who are poor and who do not have actually access to the internet. So I'm writing a book on a very poor family in Iraq, for example, and they're living in a displaced camp. They don't have electricity. They do not have running water. They have mobile phone, the kids, and that's when they're downloading. But what they're downloading is the images that they associate with. In other words, they're still not having access to connectivity in a way that you want to inspire them in new ways. They're only downloading what they know. And sometimes what they know is not necessarily good. Do you see what I mean? So that goes to the second point, which is the power of TV. We talked a lot in this conference about all the potential, but I think TV is still the king or the queen in this panel. As in, we still need to present issue, because you're still having one modem and it's actually forcing new images for the population.
You are highlighting my issue with Harim al-Sultan, for example, in the Arab world, and how much viewership it got, and this reinforces the women of the harem and the sultan and
well,
yes.
And in this case, and particularly in the Arab world, so we know there is a gap of content for Arab women, Arab and Muslim women. We do not have enough content. The content that is being produced is very traditional images. We are not celebrating the positive images in our content. We're actually keep on reinforcing the tradition. She's oppressed, she's beaten, she's all of these things. So I think it is vitally important that we start producing new content, and that is both through soap operas, but through talk shows and sitcoms and all kinds of things. That's actually why I left the $100 million humanitarian to all what to focus on is producing new content for Arab women, where there's enough of us, because I actually really believe there's enough talent we have. We do have talent. We have youth, which they have new kinds of talent. Their talent is that they're excited about learning, as opposed to the static sort of mid-career people who are not as excited. So for me, it's more fun to work with the youth because they're willing to learn and they work so hard. So we have huge talent. It is about how do we feature it in a positive way. And it is particularly important in this particular era of what we're going through in the Middle East. So I think if there's anything that I can send message to is that we need more positive talent for positive content for Arab and Muslim women. And that does not mean only cooking shows. And that does not mean only, harem shows. It actually means we have indeed the pilots and the businesswomen and the writers and the artists, and we need to feature them and celebrate them, just like her princess said, in major ways. Not one, but in major ways. This is the time where we all need to invest as a national issue and as a political issue, but mostly as for ourselves. This is important to shift our own images for ourselves.
They're telling me that our time is running out, but I want to put in one final question to Huang and Dalya, and this is about the power of internet for entrepreneurship, for mobilizing women, for mentorship. China is a huge market. How much is being done in that sense?
I think by now everybody in the room knows about Alibaba, right? So this is one
the
of
biggest IPO of this year,
yes,
and ever, I think,
in the world,
world.
So Alibaba has really done something amazing for Chinese women, especially lower income Chinese women, who are disadvantaged Chinese women, because it is an e-commerce trading platform. It managed with a PayPal-like structure to solve trust issues between buyer and seller. So it has actually released this huge amount of economic activity online to allow women to trade online and start their own business. It's probably one of the most exciting things that ever happened to a Chinese woman who does not live in a major city but want to be economically independent, which I consider is absolutely important first. It gave them the tool. It is an amazing opportunity and has opened up an entire new world of trading in China. On November 11th, on Taobao, one of the malls in Taobao alone, on that platform, in one day, the trading volume reached $10 billion in one day. So this is the kind of volume and this is the kind of energy that it releases with a e-commerce platform that can empower women.
Dalya, final question for you. Do you think that it's being done in the right way in the Arab world? We have so many women who have started their businesses, but do you think that we reached the optimal level of mentorship, of let's say giving the tools for these women to start their business properly online and be entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I don't think that you having the right, you have to have the right infrastructure. And I mentioned early on, setting the vision for having an innovation strategy for the UAE. So strategies like that are really what we would ask the governments to implement, because I think these are the true drivers to support innovation across the board. I don't think we've done enough, but I don't know what enough would be. I think it's a continuous improvement, it's a continuous development.
The private sector has
it's a
initiatives,
revolution of technology, and technology keeps changing, and the pace of innovation has really become extremely fast, and will continue to speeden up. So I think the key thing here is to make sure that we have the right infrastructure to support the ambitions of women, and women who are able now to tap into this market because of the flexibility, as we mentioned earlier, the flexibility that connectivity can offer them today, and the access of great talent. So there's a lot of, it's because of the connectivity, we have like a bank or a pool of knowledge that anyone can tap into now. Organizations now don't have to be restricted into between the four walls of their organization, but they can use the global brain or the global talent, massive amounts of intelligence to solve small problems or industrial technological problems that they have within the organization. So I think the opportunity is huge.
Thank you. Final comment, Samad.
I just want to add to that, because I think that it's a great question. I think that our youth today are finding ways to be entrepreneurs. So look at Instagram. Originally, that's not what it was designed for, but they have gone into there and found a way to have their voice heard. And I think that you're going to continue to see this type of innovation. As quickly as technology changes, there will be new platforms that the youth and others will adopt to find their voice in this interconnected world that we live in.
Thank you very much. I want to thank our panelists, and thank you for bearing with us. I hope you found the discussion interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadine, and all of your inspiring panelists.